please stand as you are able for the procession of our honored guests, delegates, faculty, and stage party.
Good afternoon. Please remain standing for the presentation of colors by the Combined Army and Air Force ROTC Color Guard of Northern Arizona University. The national anthem will be performed today by Eldon Brass Quintet. Thank you. You may be seated. At this time, I invite Ron Lee, who is Dene from the Navajo Nation and serves as the Senior Director of Development for Native American Initiatives at NAU. He will share the land acknowledgement and blessing. I also invite to the stage Sunny Lomodovki, who is Hopi in Oktamil Otum. He is a PhD candidate in the Combined Counseling School Psychology program at NAU. Sunny will play the honor song for the president following the blessing. Please stand for both the blessing and the honor song. Welcome, Ron and Sunny.
Northern Arizona University sits at the base of the San Francisco Peaks on homelands sacred to Native Americans throughout the region. We honor their past, present, and future generations who have lived here for millennia and will forever call this place home. We all have a prayer and we worship in our own ways, but we all pray to the same God. Parts of this prayer comes from my elders and ancestors. Let's bow our heads. Creator, Grandfather, we are grateful to have a land acknowledgement because it defines who we are as Indigenous peoples. For generations, our elders and ancestors have looked to the natural world and the cosmos for guidance and strength. Kodo hojondo le na hasan chama inda yedel kishitha inda e zilisan toisan nchedigin adinje da hanosonje. This is how we recite our prayers daily by first acknowledging Mother Earth, Father Sky, the sacred mountains, the sacred water that sustains us, and the flora and the fauna that we have the honor to live among. Throughout generations, our elders have taught us to have and maintain a relationship with the natural world. And we do this through prayers and songs. It's through prayers and songs that we have preserved our ancient stories, stories that inform us that our Indigenous language were the first to give voice to what an education means. Our Indigenous worldview is to live a balanced and harmonious life, a holistic view of life that strives for beauty, peace, joy, and harmony in daily living. To help us, the holy people have endowed us with the time-honored gift, long life and happiness, to protect us with self-control, endurance, and responsibility to build resilience. To do this, we must align ourselves with the four cardinal directions, the four parts of the day, the four seasons, the four sacred elements, earth, water, air, and fire. Four stages of life, the four areas of teachings that begin within the home and that mirrors our homelands. By using these principles, our elders have sustained our people for generations. And in this way, I ask that you bestow upon our university president, Dr. José Luis Cruz Rivera, and his family with guidance and strength. From the east, with inherent knowledge that emphasizes our character development and excellence of the heart and mind. From the south, with knowledge to plan, organize, implement, and encourage one another to achieve self-sufficiency and dignity, and recognize our work in all dimensions. From the west, with knowledge of life that is associated with positive human relations. This type of learning that originates within the home, where kinship terms and clans are used to address family members. And from the north, with a knowledge of hope, respect, reverence, that stresses an awareness and understanding of the interrelatedness and interdependence of all life. Because all life is cyclical and rhythmic, we ask that you embed the cycle and rhythm of the natural world within your grandson's mind, body, and spirit, And in this manner, we ask that you keep him in balance and in harmony, as this will be the core of his health and well-being while he's among family, friends, community, and nature. With all of this, we ask that you bless President Cruz Rivera with all that is good from the east, with all that is good from the south, with all that is good from the west, with all that is good from the north, from all that is good from below, from above, from all around, and from within, that he will always have the depth and breadth of knowledge to lead and advance a bold mission for a boundless Northern Arizona University. Hojana Sling, balance restored. Hojana Sling, Hojana Sling, Hojana Sling, balance restored.
Dakya ibadat sale, Dakya ibadat sali, Bahig de kya como, Bahig esta de ontona, Bahig de kya conga, Baontona, Baonta. Dakya ibadat sali, Dakya ibadat sali, Bahe de kya como esta de tona, Paonta onta, Bahe de kya conga, Paonta ona, Paonta ona.
Thank you, Ron and Sunny, for that beautiful blessing and song. Please be seated. Welcome all to the investiture ceremony for Dr. José Luis Cruz Rivera, the 17th president of Northern Arizona University. Thank you for joining us on this momentous occasion to showcase and celebrate the bound and boldest future of NAU. Joining us in the audience today are members of the university community, including representatives from all of NAU's academic departments, current and emeritus members of the Arizona Board of Regents, members of the greater Flagstaff community, and other distinguished guests, including elected officials, NAU alumni, delegates from other colleges and universities, and many more. I want to take a moment to recognize a very special guest in the audience today, the 13th president of NAU, President Emerita, Dr. Clara Lovett. And I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge and recognize the many individuals who are joining us online. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us in this celebration and recognizing the strong connection between the university and its many partners and supporters, near and far. Joining us on stage today are individuals representing numerous areas throughout the university community, and with each introduction, I will invite them to stand to be recognized. The deans of our colleges and library, the chair of the NAU Foundation, Dave Franke, and the president of NAU Alumni Association, Jim Jane, and the chair of the Native American Advisory Board, Lena Fowler. Representing our undergraduate and graduate students, we have Brendan Traxel, president of the Associated Students of Northern Arizona University, and Colonel Rebecca Seeger, president of the Graduate Student Government. Next, it's my honor to introduce our distinguished speakers of this afternoon's ceremony. Kate Ellis, President of the Faculty Senate and Professor of Theater. Dr. Michael Crow, Regents Distinguished President of Arizona State University. Lyndall Manson, Chair of the Arizona Board of Regents. Dr. Rima Brucey, Professor of Anthropology and First Lady of the University. And Dr. José Luis Cruz Rivera, the 17th President of Northern Arizona University. Now I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker, Faculty Senate President Kate Ellis, who will share greetings on behalf of the NAU faculty.
Good afternoon. This formal investiture ceremony is the final confirmation of the Arizona Board of Regents and the university community's commitment to President José Luis Cruz Rivera's leadership. He has already grown the capacity of NAU to serve the community of Northern Arizona, the state, and the nation. And he has promised to provide academic opportunity and excellence for every student who dreams of attending college. It takes talented, engaged faculty to make the promise come true. And as Faculty Senate President, I can tell you that our 17th university president has inspired us to become our best selves. I have had numerous opportunities to both listen and to work with President Cruz Rivera, and I can tell you, he is a humble man of deep integrity and a university president of extraordinary and ambitious vision. He ignites energy and excitement in a room of 5 or of 500, and I have witnessed both. He has instilled a sense of trust and hope for the future of NAU and a belief that we will get there together. President Cruz Rivera understands the deep sense of community we value, the care we feel for one another, and our boundless potential. He also fits in with the culture of NAU, with a casual and accessible style, a profound ability to listen, and what seems an instinctive sense of how to most effectively engage with students, staff, and faculty. Under his leadership, NAU will become the premier university in the country providing equitable post-secondary value to our students and the communities we serve. Last spring, during the final mental health task force meeting of the year, we were asked to share something good from what had been another challenging pandemic year in higher education. Several people simply said, President Cruz Rivera. I have heard from so many faculty, staff, and students how grateful they are for his leadership and how he is changing the culture at NAU, and that he is our president. On behalf of the faculty, I want to thank the Board of Regents for choosing the leader we are celebrating today. President Cruz Rivera, thank you for joining the community of NAU, and I hope for all of us, you are here for many, many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I would now like to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Michael Crow, who recently celebrated his 20th year as president of Arizona State University, and who, in recognition of his distinguished record of service and visionary leadership in transforming higher education in Arizona, was given the title Regents Distinguished President by the Arizona Board of Regents. Please welcome Dr. Crow.
Thank you. Thank you. It really is an unbelievable honor to be able to be here at what I hope you'll see when I get through with my remarks, an unbelievably important historical event. There is history and context to this that goes far beyond Arizona, history and context to this appointment that goes far beyond even your individual dreams or your individual generations, and I was deeply honored when I was asked to be able to be here to recognize Jose Luis, and obviously from the last comments and all the things I've been observing, he doesn't need any kickoff. He is the kickoff. It is a little bit unusual. We're wearing Middle Ages garb. There is a mace in front of me. The president will be given a chain of office. This brass ensemble over here is playing songs from previous centuries or previous millennia. What is that all about? And so I want to try to walk you through how important today is and why the appointment of a university president who is the single representative selected by the people's representative of 7.5 million people to be the servant leader of this institution, why that's such an important thing. But you got to bear with me a little bit. I just ask you to put on your thinking caps for just a second. So we are at a university, so I will speak scientifically. Our present biological form, Homo sapiens sapien, has walked this planet for about 12,000 generations, give or take. Not that long. About 500 generations ago, the first indigenous communities were here. Were raised up here. Were created here. Were present here. About 480 generations ago, human beings began to understand nature so that we could manipulate plants to do things we wanted them to do. Only 480 generations ago, and those first 11,520 generations, a little more complicated. About 100 generations ago, our species got to the point where in an area, what's presently a sort of an interior suburb of Athens, a place called Academia, named for Academe, who was one of the Greek god actors in that particular culture's manifestation, an unbelievable philosopher started the idea of what a university could be, Plato and his academy in Academia. It was, in spite of all his wisdom and all his intelligence and all his outstanding excellence, it was an elitist institution. He believed there were three types of people: philosopher kings like him, of which there were almost none and they could do anything. There were the people that he called guardians, who made the society work. And there was everyone else who was mostly interested in just survival. It was an elitist institution that did nonetheless powerful things. 60 generations of struggle to create what we think of as the university with these symbols that we have. 60 generations, in, out, dead, alive, killed, books burned, everything you can possibly imagine, as we tried to figure out how we were going to organize knowledge and knowledge creation and the role of science and the role of philosophy and all these things. 60 generations of struggle, including in that struggle, in European culture alone, the Dark Ages, the darkest of dark of dark. 40 generations ago, the idea of the university began to emerge as a comprehensive kind of way of bringing people together to teach and to learn in certain confined subjects, in certain religious oversight modalities. 40 generations ago, the universities at Bologna and Uppsala and Paris and places like that, these universities, however, were also elitist. Educate the few, educate a handful, produce a few literate, thoughtful philosophers. The same model, the philosopher king model. 15 generations ago in this country, we inherited that European model with the first manifestations of Harvard and Columbia and Princeton and schools like that. They were not egalitarian. They produced fantastic thinkers. They produced many, many unbelievable intellects. They were not egalitarian. And then in this country and in this place called Arizona, 5 generations ago, this institution was founded in its present form. 5 generations ago, built on the spirit of the design of Arizona, egalitarian, open, frontline, community service, imperfect in its initial design, imperfect in the way that it was initially rolled out, but nonetheless, only 5 generations ago was there a conceptualization of an institution like NAU actually focused on social transformation, not only the education of a few elite scholars, not only the education of a few doctors or a few lawyers or a few philosophers. So NAU is, in fact, a truly democratic university, deeply dedicated to the ideals of our democratic society, deeply dedicated to egalitarianism, deeply dedicated to individual freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, bringing everyone in, embracing everyone, using this institution as a way to advance the democracy to higher levels of success. And yes, it has been imperfect. It has been a struggle to define those terms and to implement those things and to make them happen. But 5 generations into this experiment, NAU is a transformational institution. Think about where it is. Think about the ceremony that we just had. Think about the peoples in which this institution is embedded. Think about the communities that it is a part of. It is a true, and I don't use this in any way other than the most respectful way possible. It is a true people's university. 12,000 generations into our existence. 100 generations into the idea of the university. Only now, at this moment, this day, is this university equipped to now continue its evolution as a part of our species' evolution of how do you design a university of the people. This university, the regents are sitting here in front of me, it is governed by the people. The people elect people to office. The elected officials appoint people from the citizenry of Arizona. These people select the president, help oversee the university, and they don't do that because they are power-hungry individuals hoping to spend another 1,000 hours a year on something that isn't compensating them. They do that because they believe in the idea of a people's university. And the people, their representatives, select the leader of each of the 3 public universities. This is a really important thing. My brother-in-law, my wife's brother, is a faculty member in the mathematics department at Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. He hates administrators. He said to me once, "What do you do? What is the role of a university president?" And I said, the role of a university president at a truly democratic institution is to deliver to the people the university that they need for the democracy to be successful. That's different than any other job within the institution. And so today, I view this ceremony in a historical context of 100 generations of the evolution of the idea of an intellectual institution called a university, beginning with Plato and moving forward, struggling for many, many generations, finally getting launched in Europe. And here, today, is the formal public anointment of the leader of one of these democratic institutions. José Luis Cruz Rivera is a servant leader. I've worked with him enough, interacted with him enough to know his true heart. Here's what I know. He is a gifted learner. I already heard mentioned by the faculty senate president that he's a great listener. He's a gifted learner. He knows how to learn. He may even have been born to learn. And if you look at his life history and his circumstances, a gifted learner. He is broadly culturally aware. He is culturally embedded in the culture that he was raised and is astutely aware of cultural differences, the breadth of cultures that make up our democracy, the breadth of people that are a part of our country. He accepts them all. I know he accepts them all. This is a gift that you all have at NAU, to have a gifted learner and a broadly culturally educated and culturally aware person. He is, and this is what gives me a little pitter-patter of positive, he's not, as my wife used to say, if you turn into one of those gray and pasty university presidents, I will divorce you. She used to work in the White House, and university presidents would come in as supplicants to her in the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and she said, they're all these gray and pasty losers. And all they're interested in, all they have is they just have their hands out. They just want moolah. Gray and pasty losers. And she's serious. He is a design-oriented thinker. He knows that the design of the public university in the United States to be successful, as manifested by Northern Arizona University in this unbelievably beautiful place, this unbelievably culturally diversified place, isn't done. It's far from done. Far from done. And he is a design thinker. He is an experienced academic leader. I lived in New York City for 12 years. I interacted before he was there with the institution that he came from, the City University of New York. You have no idea. I was at Columbia University, sheltered from reality. Resources falling from the vines of the trees. José Luis was at the City University of New York after having served as the leader of one of the campuses in the Bronx. He is experienced. He understands unbelievable things. I saw the first time I read his resume, I said, oh my God. The unbelievable things of complexity that he has managed is just, and I had some understanding of these things having worked with the City University of New York. I think most importantly, he is deeply in his soul committed to the success of our democracy. He understands what it's like to come in from the outside. He understands what it's like to come from a culture that's always just been held on the periphery. He understands what it's like to win scholarships to fantastic institutions and then outperform all of the privileged kids at that institution, but not let that go to your head. He's committed to this model. So when he asked me to spend a few minutes, I'm at 14 minutes and 25 seconds, so I have 35 seconds left. I was very, very excited to be here. Very excited to be a part of what I think of as a monumental historical process, and very excited to be a part of helping my friend and your president to get off to a great start. So congratulations, José Luis. And congratulations, NAU.
Thank you, Dr. Crow, for those inspiring words and for your leadership in higher education in Arizona and beyond. It's now my pleasure to welcome to the podium Lyndall Manson, Chair of the Arizona Board of Regents, who will share remarks on behalf of the Arizona Board of Regents and deliver the formal investiture.
Good afternoon, everyone. So on behalf of the Arizona Board of Regents, I am incredibly honored to be here today to celebrate the installation of Dr. José Luis Cruz Rivera as NAU's 17th president. So before the board even began the search for a new president, we spent a tremendous amount of time talking about NAU, its past, its present, and its future. And we felt we needed a leader who could help create the best NAU, focusing on its historic strengths, its developed expertise, and new opportunities. So we searched for someone who would be committed to the mission of the university, including its dedication to the access-oriented education, undergraduate focused, with world-class research in areas that fit NAU's unique place in history. We also prioritized a leader who could create and manage an atmosphere of teamwork, transparency, communication, and cooperative decision-making. President Cruz Rivera has done exactly that in his first year as a lumberjack. So he is that very rare combination of an organized engineering brain, creativity, so he has his own patents, by the way, and a very high social IQ. He's structured, he's creative, he's cooperative, and empathetic. And he's also driven by a deep, deep personal understanding of the transformative value of higher education. Making lives better through education has been fundamental to NAU since its inception, so the match is very close. He continues to execute on NAU's pledge to become the nation's leading university serving Indigenous students. He's also brought unprecedented national attention to and support of NAU's plans for expanded success in its access and opportunity mission, what higher education calls equitable post-secondary value. This concept means that any student, regardless of economic status, race, sex, or other social status, can, through their personal efforts and opportunities available at the university, succeed in college and improve their lives. Through his testimony before Congress, his attendance and speaking at national symposia, and sponsored by the Department of Education, and his involvement in organizations such as the Education Trust, that national presence for NAU has been elevated. In his first year, President Cruz Rivera has already spearheaded the launch of 2 transformative programs that embody the aspirations and values of this mission. The first is Access to Excellence, which guarantees that any Arizona resident student with a household income of less than $65,000 can attend the university tuition-free. The second is a new pilot program that aligns admission standards at NAU with Arizona high school graduation requirements, providing a clear pathway to college for thousands of qualifying Arizona students. So these programs and a renewed focus on the success and satisfaction of students, faculty, and staff has already resulted in increased enrollment for this coming fall. It's a testament to the enthusiasm generated across the campus and a positive impact on the university finances. And yesterday, he unveiled the launch of the Arizona Attainment Alliance, A++. So this initiative was orchestrated by NAU and is in partnership with the Arizona Commerce Authority and the state's 10 community college districts, already serving more than 322,000 students, and has a simple but ambitious goal: to dramatically boost the attainment rate throughout the state. Also under his leadership and vision of the new Elevating Excellence mission, NAU has experienced its largest fundraising year in history. President Cruz Rivera is an exceptional leader, and the board is confident in his vision for this institution. President Cruz Rivera, can you please come forward? I, Chair Lyndall Manson, on behalf of the Arizona Board of Regents, the university community, and the people of Arizona, do hereby install you, José Luis Cruz Rivera, as the 17th president of Northern Arizona University, with all the duties and responsibilities incumbent upon you, and with all the rights and privileges of the office on this, the 30th day of September, 2022. I present you with this presidential medallion that may be worn as part of your official university regalia. This beautiful medallion was made by retired NAU professor Joe Cornett and includes sterling silver rays reminiscent of the Arizona state flag, inlaid turquoise, and mother of pearl in the shape of the San Francisco Peaks. The words Northern Arizona University, established 1899, are embossed in sterling silver. Through this medallion, we honor our past presidents for their leadership and pledge our support to you as you forge the university's future. President Cruz Rivera, the Regents thank you for your impact on this institution in the short time that you've been here, and offer our full measure of support for your continued success in leading Northern Arizona University.
Thank you, Chair Manson, and congratulations again, President Cruz Rivera. Now please join me in welcoming Dr. Rima Brusi, Professor of Anthropology and President Cruz Rivera's wonderful wife and thought partner, to share a personal reflection and introduction.
Good afternoon, everybody. My family and I joined the Northern Arizona University community and established ourselves as residents of this beautiful town, as many of you know, during the summer of 2021. So technically, we are no longer new. We've been here for over a year already. But as I prepared for this event and tried to figure out what to say, I realized that one of the great things about having my husband formally installed as president during his second rather than first year is that we've been here long enough to start seeing some of the fruits of this presidency, of his hard work and your hard work. I'll mention only one, a recent one, a beautifully straightforward one. We've seen his first year culminating in the largest and most diverse entering class of students in the history of NAU. José Luis, who many call JL, because that's how he signs everything, JL believes in clear and consistent communication. So he often talks to the campus community about the work, the mission, the goals, and the achievements, right? But I don't think he has talked much about just how personal this work is for him and how personal it is for us. So I will do it for him. Get personal. I will start by saying higher education literally brought us together and in many ways defined our relationship. You see, one of my star students, a biology major, was dating one of his star students, electrical engineering major. And that year, José Luis hosted a get-together for his students and their plus ones. After meeting JL, my student, Jania, she couldn't wait, she immediately called me and announced that she had found the man of my life. She said, I'm quoting her now, Rima, he's perfect for you. And he has books, like good books, even poetry books. I checked the shelves. Everyone is having fun at the party. And of course, it is my student, the person that is investigating the contents of some stranger's bookshelves, right? That's my girl, I thought. There's something right there. Anyway, how can you say no to books, right? Plus, Jania is smart, and I trusted her instincts. And so, JL and I met casually. The orchestration of that coincidence is a story I'm going to save for another time, another speech. The first date came shortly after. He sent me an email message asking me out for coffee. He also included a short list of articles he figured we could read beforehand. You know, for us to discuss over coffee. Yes, our first date had a reading list. A lot of faculty here, many of you would call it a syllabus. And I loved it. I loved the whole silly nerds in love thing. It was a short courtship. We met in March, we were engaged by December, we married the following March. Ours was very much a campus romance. We walked around campus holding hands, we had lunch together in the only cafeteria on campus, and we even shared an office. Well, that third one, to be fair, sharing an office was less of a romantic and more of a practical decision. You see, his office was in the engineering building, which, as tends to happen, was in decent shape. My office was in the basement of the Social Sciences and Humanities building. It had mold, a leak, an office mate, a chatty office mate, and a resident rat. But yeah, it was a campus romance, and everybody on campus seemed genuinely happy and excited for us. In fact, my department secretaries and work-study students started like 2 months into the thing, started collecting clips from bridal magazines. I was mortified. And even the president of the university, and this was sweet, the president of the university himself invited us over to his house and literally gave us his blessing. Once, I was visiting the academic senate. I was not a senator back then, I was advocating in favor of a student organization, and everything was going well, but then at some point the discussion and our cause somehow got hopelessly stuck. We were all getting along, and suddenly everyone was angry and deadlocked. In the Senate, right? So weird, never happens. I was in distress, and JL came to the rescue with a colorful poster with bar graphs and a spreadsheet. He asked for a turn, and he did his thing. You know, this thing he does, you've seen it, many of you have seen it. It's the thing he does where he makes complex issues click and make sense. And suddenly the senators were no longer angry. They were smiling and agreeing with us and with each other. It was like magic. I think my memory wants to tell me we went all for a drink afterward, but that might be just my memory making up things. Anyway, who knew a Senate meeting could be so romantic? And who needs a white horse or a shining armor when your knight has a spreadsheet and knows Robert's Rules of Order? Seriously now, remember this was our first year together. And I'm aware, my nerdy damsel in distress, I realize that's not exactly a good look on me. But I assure you, I wasn't just damseling and distressing. I was watching him. I was observing him. I was learning who he was. What did his intervention in the Senate say about him? To me, it was an early sign of several things. It meant that he had studied the issue carefully, understood it in depth, figured out a better way to communicate it, and, this is important, taken action. In short, I saw thoughtfulness together with quality of execution. Two qualities you don't often see together. A powerful combination that I believe eventually became an important part of JL's distinctive leadership style. Now, I have to say, he was not at the time contemplating a career in higher ed administration. In fact, he was taking a leave to be the Chief Technology Officer, the CTO, at a small startup. He was working on, this was before smartphones, that's important to keep in mind, before smartphones. He was working on a voice over IP phone, quite smart, the phone, it had a little screen and you touched it. A voice over IP phone that for a while was called, wait for it, iPhone. But eventually, JL and his colleagues changed his name to Mongoose. But looking back, the signs really were there. For example, a lot of my own work back then was in the nearby public housing projects, close to the university, and the schools that served them. The kids I worked with rarely made it to college, period, let alone to our campus, the STEM flagship in the public university system. It was very early in what would eventually become my years-long work on educational access and inequality, and I wasn't even using those words back then. I was still figuring things out. JL understood and cared about this work, not just because it was my work, but because the issue actually mattered to him. He offered invaluable insight. He spent time teaching me how to find and talk to potential funders. He gave me consistent feedback, excellent feedback, always generous and careful, but always honest, on my writing. And he sat with me sometimes for hours at a time, working through theoretical, practical, and ethical issues. As it turned out, it was not a new interest for him. Before we met, he actually had been designing and implementing pre-engineering summer experiences for years, and was particularly keen on recruiting underserved students from underfunded schools. Perhaps because we shared certain life experiences, childhood poverty, homelessness, and so on, issues with our own schooling, and also shared a love for the reality of the public university and the idea of the public university. In fact, we both felt that in some way, the public university, ours, had saved us both. It was easy and rewarding to talk to him about my daily work, even though it was a work that involved many sad stories and much injustice. Those conversations also allowed me to know early on that JL and I shared an important tacit understanding that is crucial for policy and practice, but was not too common in our world at that time. Rather than focusing on what the students were doing wrong or what their families were lacking, we both felt that the methodological and ethical imperative should be on what institutions can do to support their students' learning and achievement. So this is all about our first year, right? By the middle of that first year, I think 80% of our conversations were probably about higher ed. It's really boring, I mean, for other people. The children, they did not appreciate it anyway. And especially access to it. How to get low-income students admitted in larger numbers. How to provide them with meaningful, enriching educational experiences. How to support them so they can earn their degrees and transform their own lives, their families, and their communities. How to teach better. How to lead better. Speaking of leadership, really, I must have been living under a rock because I didn't know JL, I didn't know about him, anything, before my student brought him to my attention. Remember, he's got books. But as soon as I started dating him, I learned he was actually very popular. Like, popular enough for people to give him cute nicknames. The students, I found out, I'm sorry, baby. The students, I found out, often called him J-Lo. I learned this one on my birthday when JL brought me flowers to my classroom while I was teaching. And after he left, some students were like, "Oh my God, Professor, you're dating J-Lo." And I'm like, okay. I am, huh? It wasn't just the students, though. Many faculty members had a nickname for him as well. They called him Baby Dean. And yes, I am talking about grown people with PhDs going, "Oh my God, you're dating Baby Dean." So this Baby Dean nickname, I found out, came from a short but critical moment in the history of the campus, when JL stepped up and became Dean of Academic Affairs during a very difficult transition. He was still in his late 20s back then, hence the baby in Baby Dean. Back then, he was not interested in higher ed administration. That was not like in his plans. But his changes to things in a short period of time, to things like our terrible, awful, no good course enrollment process were legendary. That thing was truly a nightmare. There were lines everywhere. Students could not find courses. Courses could not find students. The system crashed regularly. And there was bureaucracy at every turn, every semester. And this man fixed it. It took a lot of, engineering, I guess, but also a lot of listening, explaining, convincing, leading. You could start telling, right, that he was born for this. People still talk about how JL fixed the course enrollment, the awful course enrollment nightmare. In the process, he earned, in fact, the reputation for being the kind of person, the kind of leader, who is not intimidated by those oh-so-common phrases in the world of higher ed. Things like, it cannot be done. It will never change. It's always been this way. It is known. Why am I telling you these stories? The stories of our first year together. Well, first, because it's your first year together, right? We're celebrating that. But also because I wanted to share that, looking back, I find the same person I am with today, the same qualities, the same attributes, the first rehearsals of some of the skills and themes that make him such an effective leader today. A belief in educational opportunity, thoughtfulness, quality of execution. I saw it then, I see it now. What I mean is that José Luis doesn't often talk about himself, and yet somehow he's an open book. My husband is not only the most competent person I know, he's also the best person I know. He does his homework, he's generous, he's very thoughtful, but also very much a man of action. He's confident without arrogance, that's a hard one to pull off, and he knows his stuff. Throughout his career in higher ed administration, he's been consistent to the point of obsession in a good way. Access, equity, education as a public good and as a human right, quality of execution. Every place and time is different, and so the policies and practices may need to vary, of course, but the values that guide his work have not changed in all this time. I can promise you that. Now, of course, it's not perfect. He can't carry a tune. He refuses to eat his tofu. He moves it around on the plate like a child and hides it under other foods. He spoils the dogs, and he plays 80s music really, really loud. But he's still very much the man who took the time and showed up at that Senate meeting with his magical spreadsheet. The same man that wanted to find future engineers in our poorest neighborhoods. The same man that quietly and confidently fixed a decades-long bureaucratic nightmare in spite of all the times he had to listen to yet one more form of, it cannot be done. He seems genuine and approachable because he is. He truly is genuine and approachable. His moral intuition is uncanny. I don't know anybody like him in that regard. He has this ability to know what the right thing to do is, and then go ahead and do it even if it's hard. He's worked at big companies, startup companies, system offices, and think tanks, but those of us who know him best, we know he's really a campus creature. When we met, he loved walking around that campus, the campus where we both obtained our bachelor degrees. Today, he loves walking around this campus. One campus, long ago, nurtured our budding romance. This campus today will nurture his life's most important effort. A long time ago, it took me less than a year, like you, that first year, to see who José Luis is, to know him, to say yes, and to marry him. During this past year, his first year as president of NAU, I've seen him inspire and energize this campus community. In 1 year, we have seen his thoughtfulness and quality of execution result in bold initiatives that in higher ed tend to take years, decades even. So today, at this installation, at the beginning of his second year, I can tell you that I truly believe this community and this president are perfect for each other. He's got books. I believe that You are perfect for each other. I believe that José Luis's story, his talents, his character, his values, and his passion are ready to seize the moment. A moment crucial not only for NAU, a moment crucial for the state, everyone in the state. A state where everyone stands to benefit from equitable access to quality public higher education. And so I too feel inspired, energized, confident. I'm ready to work. I don't know about you. I'm ready to work because I know this man. I know this is just the beginning, and I am convinced that the future of NAU, our future, is bright. Thank you.
I should have known by now that to ask for a copy of the speech beforehand. Thank you, Rima. I also want to thank, first I have to get it together. I also want to thank our faculty president, Kate Ellis, for her wonderful words. Other than the title of dad, I think the one I'm most proud of is professor. And you seldomly hear professors extending a vote of confidence to an administrator. It's usually a vote of no confidence. So thank you very much for the partnership. Of course, also want to thank the very generous words of distinguished Regents President Michael Crow, who I so admire for what he has done for this state and for the country in terms of elevating higher education. And thank you, Regent Manson, for the opportunity to be part of this great university community and, of course, this tri-university system that is so important for the future fortunes of the state of Arizona. So thank you. Thank you for honoring me and NAU with your presence here today. I am overwhelmed to be in front of so many who do so much to advance better days. To my partner, Rima, and we'll talk tonight about that speech. Mi compañera de viaje con quien le he dado la vuelta al mundo. Aquí sigo enamorado y deslumbrado por ti. To Chair Manson, Regents Penley, Duval, Mata, Pacheco, Herbold, Goodyear, Brewster, Kanier, Reese, Governor Ducey, and Superintendent Hoffman, to Executive Director Arnold and colleagues of the Arizona Board of Regents, to President Crow, President Robbins, President Emerita Lovett, and Regent Emeritus Calderon, thank you for your partnership in advancing the fortunes of the people and communities of the great state of Arizona. To our tribal and Native Nation leaders and members of NAU's Native American Advisory Board, thank you for the wise counsel, invaluable support, and strong partnership as we seek to better serve Indigenous students and the communities they represent. To our Alumni Association and Foundation Board members, elected officials, public servants, corporate leaders, community organizers, fellow educators, school principals, community college partners, and friends of NAU, thank you for your determined, unwavering support of our university's mission. To our NAU students, faculty, staff, alums, deans, chairs, and members of the President's Cabinet, Faculty Senate, University Advisory Board, Staff Advisory Board, Commission on Commissions, ASNAU, and Graduate Student Government, thank you for living our university's values daily, for the incredible momentum we have built together in the first year of our 17th presidency, and for your willingness to reach higher. To our distinguished alumnus, Charles D. Pylon, who is here today as part of the processional of his 7th presidential investiture, the first of which dates back to President Lacey Eastbourne, when Chuck was a student leader, and then here at Arizona State College at Flagstaff. Thank you for your love of all things NAU, for your many contributions to the storied history of our university, and for being here with us as we launch a new NAU solidly anchored in the foundation you and countless others have ably set. Please stand, Chuck, so that we can all give you a big round of applause. To my mentors, colleagues, friends, and the people of Puerto Rico, thank you for instilling the values of dignity, integrity, and solidarity into the essence of my existence. And as always, to my children, José Luis III, Harold Esteban, Marco Andrés, Aura Angélica Libertad, and Álvaro Juan, my grandchildren, Kiara Said and Ares Damian, my parents, siblings, nephews, nieces, in-laws, thank you for your love, your belief in me, and your faith in us. As Chair Manson stated, I am an engineer. More specifically, I am a rambling wreck from Georgia Tech. And I do know that Georgia Tech is in Michael's hit list. And frankly, my money's on him. I have many memories of my time as an electrical engineering PhD student in our nation's deep south. But one seems particularly apt for this moment. It was the year 1992, and Tech was hosting a vice presidential debate featuring Dan Quayle, Al Gore, and, yes, there was a third independent candidate on the ballot, Ross Perot's pick for VP, Admiral James Stockdale. Very good. And those of you who are old enough to remember will know exactly where I am going with this. In his opening remarks, Admiral Stockdale led on stage what is perhaps the most existential question in the history of political debates in the United States of America. Who am I? Why am I here? Well, I didn't get it back then, but today I have a better sense of how he felt. You see, my journey to this stage, a stage from which today we launched the idea of a new NAU, has been a most improbable one. One which could have very well been derailed in the earliest years of my childhood, and many times since. Allow me to illustrate with a story that I often share on momentous occasions such as this. It was just a couple of weeks into the fall semester, and I was on my way to elementary school, somewhere in the central Florida of the 1970s. But I was beginning to suspect that my cover had been blown, that my attempts to cloak myself in the invisibility of stillness and quietness had failed, and that the kids and the adults in the school surely knew, they had to know, that I did not speak or understand English. I was halfway to school when suspicion turned to panic, so I turned my bike around, I returned home, and told my mother, in no uncertain terms, that I would never, never, ever, nunca, 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 go to school again. My tearful arguments got me nowhere. My mother, whose most frequent advice to me was to remember that education is the one thing no one can ever take away from you, was adamant that I had to return to school immediately. But I'll be late, I countered. Pues nada, mijo. Le dices a la maestra que estabas sick in the morning. It's okay. Just go back and tell your teacher, I was sick in the morning, my mom said. I repeated my mother's words in my head as I pedaled back to school. I was sick in the morning, 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 I was sick in the morning. I got to school, parked my bike, filled myself with courage, and walked into the classroom. And as I entered the room, I blurted out what I later learned sounded like I was a chicken in the morning. The room erupted into laughter, just as it did now, and the courage drained from my body. And just as I was beginning to hate myself for taking my mother's advice, my teacher walked over to me, hugged me tight, maybe a little too tight, and said, "Yo ayudo tú. I'll help you." With her beautiful, broken Spanish, in an instant, she quieted the laughter that fueled my self-doubt and steeled my resolve to live life with the same quiet confidence she modeled to me that day. Rarely a year goes by without my mother and I sharing a good laugh over that day when I was a chicken in the morning. It's become one of those family stories that is embellished every time it is retold, but has a core so powerful, it remains worth retelling. To this day, I am of the mind that my teacher's intentionality in her work, her unspoken commitment to connecting lives to opportunity, helped shape the trajectory of my life. A life that has benefited from and been dedicated to the ideal promulgated by Horace Mann that education, beyond all other devices of human origin, is the great equalizer of the conditions of men, the balance wheel of the social machinery. A life that has brought me here today to help lead the Northern Arizona University community of teachers, learners, scholars, creators, innovators, and advocates as they seek to elevate excellence and build a new NAU. A new NAU that will build upon the university's 123-year legacy of leadership to become the nation's preeminent engine of opportunity, ensuring talent is met with opportunity to meet its full potential, vehicle of economic mobility, offering meaningful educational experiences leading to careers of consequence, and driver of social impact, nurturing the freedom to inquire as a means to fuel lives of purpose. A life that is humbled by the accomplishments of the NAU of today, intrigued by the prospect of the bold and boundless future that awaits the new NAU, energized by the university's commitment to elevate excellence, and inspired to do my part to perfect the very idea of a university. And what a powerful idea the idea of a university is. President Crow made a very eloquent accounting of how this idea has evolved and how much has been accomplished in just the last several generations in terms of ensuring that it is accessible not only to the elite, but to all who have talent, are willing to work hard, and are looking to meet their full potential. Long before I read Plato, John Henry Newman, Clark Kerr, or Michael Crow, actually before I could even read, I was intrigued by this idea, the idea of a university, perhaps because my high school educated mother frequently talked about the promise of going to La Universidad, a promise she'd extol against what in hindsight was a most precarious existence, which to any reasonable observer would suggest that overwhelming odds would have had to be overcome for the promise of La Universidad to be within reach for her or for me. My first recollection of my mom's mention of La Universidad is from a hot and humid night in which I could not sleep because in addition to being uncomfortable, I was rather hungry. I went to my mother to air my grievances, and without missing a beat, she was always quick to respond. She came up with a solution. The reason I was hungry, she said, was that, would you know it, the refrigerator was empty. But fortunately for us, she said, because the refrigerator was empty, we could place my pillow inside it for a few minutes, leading to a much more comfortable sleeping situation. With that unbreakable logic, my mother fully addressed my situation and somehow used the occasion to make the case, as I drifted off to sleep, of why I needed to go to La Universidad. You see, my mother wanted to go to college, but the opportunity for her to do so did not materialize until much later in life. Still, in her musings about La Universidad, she was, perhaps unknowingly, instilling in me the confidence to aspire to the type of excellence that she viscerally, if not through experience, knew that La Universidad could elevate. A confidence to aspire that my then high school educated father would years later nurture through his frequent calls for quality of execution by admonishing that if I was going to do something, I needed to do it well, and through his strategic moves to ensure that I was well positioned to meet educational opportunities, however elusive those opportunities may have been. At the time when the phrase La Universidad was in the air, my 4-year-old brain would conjure up an image of hundreds of bunk beds inside a gigantic space full of books and food, a space that, for some inexplicable reason at the time, was populated by people from all over the world wearing colorful, fancy clothing. But perhaps, maybe it wasn't such an inexplicable thought, right? Now, I did make it to La Universidad, and so eventually did my mom. After a nearly fatal car accident which required months of surgeries and years of rehabilitation, her aspirations were met with opportunity, and she would earn her RN degree. One of my fondest memories is walking her down the aisle as she proceeded to her seat, looking regal in her regalia and seeing her innate intelligence recognized by the honors medallion. That adorned her chest. Please join me in giving my mother, José Rivera Casanova, who is watching via live stream from the battered but always stunningly beautiful island of Puerto Rico, a big round of applause. But back to the idea of a university and how we will go about perfecting that idea and the eyes wide open, all-in approach we must take to build the new NAU. Because while it may seem soothing and perhaps even romantic to think about universities, as I did nearly 5 decades ago, as mythical utopian spaces full of books, food, and peoples dedicated to the idyllic pursuit of knowledge, the reality is that for universities to thrive, they must engage with the social, cultural, political, environmental, technological, and economic preoccupations of the day. Consider the words of Leonard Leaf, the founding president of Lehman College of the City University of New York, a college I had the privilege to lead for a few years ago, an experience I will forever cherish and reflect upon. Gracias, Dolly y Luz, por estar aquí con nosotros hoy. In his 1969 inaugural speech, he stated that, for better or for worse, colleges were meant to provide the milieu for thinking about great issues, not for acting on them. But 20 years later, he was president for 23 years. 20 years later, when asked if Lehman College would take a leadership position in helping the Bronx address some of the social issues of the day, his response was more in line with what one would expect today from an invested steward of place? Yes, he responded, it would be criminal for us to sit by the wayside. And so it is today, in the here and now, that we know that for a university to educate, create, innovate, and elevate, it must first be a good steward of place. And this is hard. So notwithstanding that the state of our university is strong, our vision is clear, our university community is mobilized and engaged, and our outlook is bold and boundless, we must recognize that our resolve to build a new NAU will naturally be tested by the context in which we operate. But we must persevere to steel our resolve as we seek to elevate excellence and deliver on the idea of a new NAU, an NAU that will be the nation's preeminent engine of opportunity, vehicle of upward mobility, and driver of social impact by delivering equitable post-secondary value to the people of Arizona and beyond. For us to build that new NAU, we must expand access to opportunity, broaden perspectives and deepen connections, and champion the freedom to inquire and learn. And I will take each one of these three in turn before closing my remarks. Point number one, I believe that to elevate excellence, we must expand access to opportunity. Because if we don't, we perpetuate the ill effects of inequality. The good news, we at NAU are ready. During my presidential transition, I met a first-generation student who, upon introducing himself, proudly stated that he was a fourth-generation Arizonan from one of our state's resilient rural communities. I was not surprised by the pride Arizonans take in their relation to place, but was struck by the fact that it had taken 4 generations for this family to send one of its members to college. Indeed, I went on to learn that others before him had wanted to go to college, but for many reasons, not too dissimilar to those that stood in the way of my mom's own aspirations, did not. Reasons that included being place-bound to take care of family obligations, time-bound to accommodate the need to work to make ends meet, and the uncertainty that comes from being the first one in your family to dare to pursue higher education. Unfortunately for this proud Arizonan family, talent, hard work, and dreams had not previously been met with the corresponding opportunity to benefit from the promise of La Universidad. And we at NAU find this to be unacceptable. And so as we seek to advance our mission, we acknowledge that for students and communities to reach higher, we must create the conditions that will fully develop their confidence to aspire and provide them the information, tools, skills, and supports they need to realize their dreams. And this is but one of the reasons why we came together in the first year of our 17th presidency to set a strong foundation upon which to expand access. We did so by committing to educate, support, and empower students from all backgrounds, identities, and lived experiences to reach their full potential and contribute to a more just, equitable, inclusive, prosperous, and sustainable future. A commitment we went on to demonstrate by launching the Access to Excellence initiative, through which we meet talent with opportunity by assuring admission to all Arizona high school graduates with a 3.0 GPA and ensuring that all students from families with household incomes under $65,000 a year, more than half of all households in Arizona, can benefit from the excellence of an NAU education, tuition-free. At a time when we are facing an annual shortage of more than 26,000 bachelor's degrees needed to fuel our new economy, and research suggests that only 17% of our current ninth graders in Arizona are expected to earn a bachelor's degree by 2029, NAU's efforts to expand access to an excellent and affordable education are as timely as they are invaluable to individuals, but also to the communities that they represent and the state as a whole. And we're well on our way. As was indicated before, this fall, we have welcomed the largest, most accomplished, most Arizonan and most diverse first-year full-time class in our 123-year history. And just yesterday, we announced a transformative statewide partnership with Arizona Community College Districts and the Arizona Commerce Authority to dramatically boost the state's education attainment rate, a partnership with a footprint spanning all 15 Arizona counties and serving more than 322,000 students. So through these efforts, we will ensure that talent, regardless of the form it takes or the forces that have shaped it, is met with true, real opportunity to fully develop for the individual, for the benefit of the individual in question, and the communities that they represent. Which brings me to my second point. I believe that to elevate excellence, we must broaden perspectives and deepen connections. Because if we don't, we will limit the knowledge and understanding needed to transform diverse lived experiences into common solutions to the challenges together we face. The good news, we at NAU are ready. Expanding access is not only important to ensure that talent is met with opportunity, but also because it enriches the educational process by exposing students to each other's lived experiences, expressed identities, and professed beliefs. Indeed, when individuals from all walks of life come together and put their biographies in the context of the larger narratives of history, society, and culture, something powerful, even magical happens, as individual perspectives are broadened, collective connections deepened, and commonalities celebrated. Nobel Prize-winning Mexican poet and diplomat Octavio Paz would say that this magical something would manifest itself as the strengthening of a democracy, a strengthening that is predicated on the ability of a country to educate its people, a strengthening that Uruguayan journalist and literary legend Eduardo Galeano would probably add is predicated on the ability of a country to learn from its people. At NAU, we are thrilled to welcome individuals from all backgrounds, racial, ethnic, cultural, and socioeconomic, from states that are red, blue, and purple, and from more than 50 countries on 6 continents around the globe. NAU's community benefits from an enriching learning environment that is fueled by teachers, scholars, learners, and dedicated staff who represent themselves a broad cross-section of society and who work hard to create the space for freedom of speech and academic freedom to come together, providing a voice to all, regardless of who they love, where they're from, the balance of their checking account, the tenets of their faith, the intersectionality of their identity, the nature of their politics, or the clarity of their aspirations. So as we engage in the important work ahead, NAU will treasure and cultivate the opportunity for this community to come together, engage in spirited conversations about the most crucial issues of the day, contribute to advancing knowledge and understanding, and power the future health of our communities, our economy, and our society. And as someone, and President Crow pointed to this, which just elevates him in my book for his power of observation, as someone who throughout his life has more often than not been the other in the room, the outsider looking in, the strange one hoping to become familiar, to become conversant, I cannot overstate the importance of this work. Learning to listen, observe, and understand what people think, why they believe what they believe, and how their perspectives shape their actions are skills that have served me well as I have sought to find my place in the world and define the space I occupy in relation to others. And these are skills we at NAU seek to develop in each and every one of our students today and into the future. Which brings me to my third and final point. I believe that to elevate excellence, we must champion the freedom to inquire and learn. Because if we don't, we perpetuate mediocrity, stifle lifelong learning, and rob those who come into our university community of the right to question critique, investigate, and propose new ideas and solutions to the grand challenges and wicked problems of our time. The good news, we at NAU are ready. Indeed, NAU's commitment to freedom of speech and academic freedom is a well-documented core value of our ethos, recognized by external groups such as the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, supported by the Arizona Board of Regents, and recently memorialized by our university in a newly developed and approved faculty constitution. And our mission statement, which calls on us to transform lives and enrich communities through high-quality academics and impactful scholarship, creative endeavors, and public service, is top of mind as we seek to elevate our distinctive areas of excellence and build the new NAU. Now, I must admit that it wasn't until my mid-30s that my appreciation for the freedom to inquire and learn was truly cemented. I remember when it happened, if not the room where it happened. And I'm going to take some issue with the spreadsheet comments that Rima made before. But perhaps we'll do that over wine in the after party here. Early in our relationship, Rima saw me reading The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman. She put down her own reading, a paper that I don't know why, but the title of the paper was How to Take Care of Your Introvert. She walked up to me and lovingly said, "You know, friends don't let friends read Friedman unless you are reading him in dialogue with Stiglitz, Harvey, and Chomsky." She then quickly suggested I watch the fascinating 1969 foreign affairs debate between Chomsky and Buckley, recommended that I read the entire literary work of Nobel Prize-winning novelist José Saramago, and promised to prepare a reading list to better support my then curiosity about the good, the bad, and the ugly of globalization. So talk about syllabi. So true to form, a few days later, she brought me a large stack of books curated to build upon an engineering education that had evidently been limited by my lack of sophistication as an undergrad, as reflected by the fact that I mostly chose my non-engineering courses by the time of day they were offered, not by the expansive worldview they could unveil. So here's what happened, and how it connects to why I so strongly believe that in building the new NAU, we need to ensure that we champion the freedom to inquire and learn. After reading Manufacturing Consent by Edward Herman and Noam Chomsky, and watching the Chomsky-Buckley debate, I was blown away by the tools I then had to understand the role of media in mediating political discourse and the motivations of states in spreading their ideals. At the time, I had many questions, including some about the unnerving emerging dangers to civil discourse by what seemed to be increasingly biased algorithms ruled by big tech. Yes, really, that's what I was preoccupied by 17 years ago. And one of the main things I remain preoccupied about today as I witness the effect increased political polarization has on our ability to speak to each other, our ability to find commonality in our diversity. But Rima had just exposed me to the generative and regenerative power of the freedom to inquire, and it was clear to me that this freedom was central to any plausible idea of the type of education a university should strive to provide, no matter the level of sophistication of its undergrads. And I needed to know more. So I thought I'd, just shoot Dr. Chomsky an email and see what he thought about disconcerting algorithms and the like. On April 6, 2005, at 4:11 p.m., I sent Dr. Chomsky, MIT Distinguished Institute Professor and renowned public intellectual, an email with the subject, Google News and Manufacturing Consent, in which I stated in part, "Dear Dr. Chomsky, I have recently been introduced to your writings and would like to know your thoughts on the ever more popular online news compilation sources, in which the more often a specific point of view of a story appears, the higher the story will be placed in the news portal, leading most readers to only look at the top most relevant results aligned with their views, as going out and searching the web for alternative perspectives requires a lot of energy. Just 2 hours and 12 minutes later, I received a reply from Dr. Chomsky that read in part, "Interesting. I didn't know anything about this. I'd suggest that you contact such and such at the University of here and there." Of course, I'm redacting. In my mind, I took this response in stride, added Professor such and such's latest books to my reading list, and carried on. Rima's recollection is a little different. According to her, this grown man, father of 3 at the time, tenured full professor, NSF Early Career Award recipient, and fairly respected academic administrator, was jumping up and down saying, "He wrote back, he wrote back." Now, surely the truth is somewhere in the middle. But regardless of whose recollection is the most accurate, the points I am trying to make with this story is that in championing the freedom to inquire and learn in the new NAU, we must first inspire our students to become lifelong learners. Learners who will hopefully not be fazed by any obstacle they may face in the future, and who will, upon gaining a broader perspective of the world, regardless of where that perspective lands in our traditional political and ideological spectrums, that when they gain that perspective, that they will cherish the joy and wonder that comes with new understandings. Second, we need to recognize that in exercising our freedom to inquire, we have a responsibility to parlay our evolving understanding of the physical and social order of our surroundings into actions. Actions that will engage others in the type of civil discourse needed to bridge the gap between our current reality and our professed aspirations as a democracy. And third, we need to remember that it is in championing our university's community's freedom to inquire and learn, working to expand the frontiers of knowledge and engaging with our local communities, that our university helps build a more just society, a more perfect union, and a more sustainable future. In closing, let me restate my confidence in our collective ability to elevate excellence and build the new NAU we collectively envision. We will be recognized as the nation's preeminent engine of opportunity, vehicle of economic mobility, and driver of social impact. We will do so by expanding access, broadening perspectives, deepening connections, and championing the freedom to inquire. And we will succeed by adopting thoughtful yet purposeful approaches that recognize that change need not be slow to be steady, nor disruptive to be meaningful. Through this work, we will continue to do our part to ensure that the long arc of the moral universe does indeed bend toward justice, always recognizing, as Richard Burden, Chancellor of the University of Bristol, long ago proclaimed, that it is in universities that the soul of a people mirrors itself. On this optimistic note, and hoping for a very enthusiastic response, I now ask all of us if we are in fact, as I have repeatedly stated today, ready for the critical work that lies ahead. Are we ready? Yes. Are we ready? Yes. Okay then, let's roll up our sleeves, sharpen our focus, open our hearts, steel our resolve, and get the job done. Thank you, and go Jacks.
Okay, let's hear it one more time for NAU's 17th president, José Luis Cruz Rivera. Please join me in thanking the Eldon Brass Quintet for providing all of today's music. I'll now ask the Combined Army and Air Force ROTC Color Guard of Northern Arizona University to retire the colors. Please stand.
Retrieve the colors. Host. Host. Right. Haste. Forward. Hut.
Distinguished guests, thank you again for joining us today. Please continue to stand as we will now begin the recessional, led by the stage party, which will be followed by the delegates, faculty, and honored guest. When the recessional has concluded, please join us in the historic NAU North Quad to continue the celebration. I now ask Kate Ellis forward to retrieve the symbolic mace as we conclude the investiture ceremony of Dr. Cruz Rivera as NAU's 17th president.